Hi there. Welcome to Sovereign Voices. I am the host, founder, and creator of Sovereign Voices. My name is Renee Dubois, and I'm sure you have perhaps heard my audio podcast or have reviewed this particular visual or video podcast. And I really hope that I've inspired you, touched, healed, and encouraged you on many different levels. I have often declared that I don't want my platform to be one where I'm spewing out hate or mean speech or speech that really should be extrapolated from the airwaves. I'm in hopes that you perhaps are finding strength and a bit more knowledge from what I articulate on my podcast. I try to do them on Mondays and Tuesdays to bring forth what I think is going to be informative and full of details and even some entertainment from the way I passionately carry on about certain things. But above all, that you will gain great insight, useful insight, and walk away feeling just a little bit more positive than perhaps you did from all of the media, independent or network, that you're perhaps watching and listening to. And there's so much information out there that is extremely discouraging, especially if you're in the United States these days, and very troubling. So I really want to provide something that you're going to love, you're going to like. How about that? Let's talk about Donald J. Trump and his speech at the General Assembly, or to the General Assembly at the United Nations. Now, I'm a part of the UN and I do a lot of things around the world as the founder and CEO of XL Crypto Partners, which is a fintech company specifically creating financial inclusion software and products for the financially excluded, better known as the unbanked, around the world. You may also know, or maybe you don't know, that I've lived a year, 2, 3 years in 40 countries around the globe. And I did that by being a keynote speaker. So I know a little bit about speaking. I've been a keynote speaker for, okay, hopefully I don't look my age, and I'm not going to tell you my age, but I have been a speaker living around the world. That's how I made my wages, my earnings as a speaker, living all over the world over 38 years. And I immensely enjoyed it. Most of those nations that Trump spoke to today, September 23rd, 2025, and I'm giving that date so that depending on when you watch this video, this broadcast, you'll know the date that I'm speaking of or the day that I'm speaking of. And my heart went out to many of those nations as I watched the cameraman pan the assembly. And because I also attend general assemblies myself, I know what it looks like in that room. I know what the cameramen have to do to assess your facial expressions. And ooh, I saw a lot of people that, in my own professional and personal opinion, were incensed and just enraged over most of what he said. He spoke for 56 minutes. Let me get into some things that I found very, very, very uncomfortable, but very powerful tips or tools to convey to you that I think you might find helpful. As I said, my heart went out to all of those nations that I've not lived in. I have been to on quite a few occasions. You may remember 30 years ago when you traveled internationally, there was a time when your passports were stacked, and you could see people standing in immigration line, myself included, with passports stacked like that. And at that time, when your passport pages had expired and you had utilized all of them, they would give you a new passport and they would sort of glue it or stack it on top of your old one. So it was nothing to see people waiting in the queue to go through immigration for the country wherever we were at the time with passports stacked that tall. Of course, it's not like that today. You simply get your old passport back with holes clipped into it, and you receive a new one at the same time. All new pages, and there's all new chips and all of these great things that are happening with passports these days in countries everywhere to protect, to defend, and to enhance, but also to identify. Let me tell you, I felt that this whole thing was a spectacle right out the gate. The man is holding hands with his wife. They approach the escalator, as he said in his speech, and I watched it. It suddenly, abruptly stopped. Now, that's not funny. I have been in places all over the world preparing to step on a moving escalator, and as I'm stepping and put my foot on the step, it stopped. And I can tell you on many occasions, had I not had my hands on the armrails, I would have been thrown forward, face just torn apart, because when they stop, it's a harsh, abrupt stop. And my neck would have been broken. I literally could have been killed. I have seen, even in China, videos that went viral where a woman took her little boy and threw him to people already on the mall floor as she is being literally cut up into pieces because the platform at the top of the escalator dropped out, hole fell out, and she dropped down, and you can see her just reaching and looking up as her body is just being marred by the blades. Now, I know that sounds horrible and horrific, but I've shared that story for a purpose. You may not like Donald Trump or his principles, his agenda. I'm one of them. I don't like anything he does or that he says. I feel he's very divisive and racist and all these things that you may be thinking. But in a world of free speech and where we all have the right to say or feel what we do, the Bible even declares, choose you this day whom you will serve. Well, God is talking about you can choose the devil or you can choose God. One is evil, one is good. Oh, let's stop there. And my point happens to be that it was pretty awful, and I think scary for them, for Trump and his wife, when it stopped. They looked to their right very quickly to see what was going on, and then they proceeded to walk up the escalator. I've done that before myself, but then depending on where I was, the country I was in, I elected not to walk up the escalator in case it started moving again while I'm walking and moving. I just chose to leave and go take the elevator or the stairs. Stairs is going to be hard, no doubt, but very good for your heart. So those are typically my choices when something like that happens. So it started off kind of bad in that instance. They get to the assembly and he starts talking about how the teleprompter suddenly stopped. Now, look, I've got very strong opinions about Donald Trump. And the facts that are out there in terms of details that are very specific to fact about him, you can believe that the teleprompter suddenly stopped, but I don't. What I know and believe about Donald Trump, I truly believe in my heart of hearts. He went to those people, managing that teleprompter and told them, this is me saying this. There's no fact. I have no evidence. I'm just basing it on how he is, how he has always been, and how he is now. I think he went to them and told them, when I get on the podium, you stop the teleprompter. I'm going to say what I have to say. That's Donald J. Trump. And they did exactly what he said. Now, I can take it a little bit further and tell you, he spoke 56 minutes, isn't it? And when he did, he waited for that last 4 to 5 minutes. And suddenly he starts talking about peace and togetherness and unity. You remember that? And if you have ever just really paid attention to how he talks, you know that wasn't bloody Trump talking. He was reading the teleprompter. He doesn't talk like that. It's not in him to talk like that. He doesn't have the intellect. I'm sorry, but he doesn't. Those last 5 minutes of his speech wasn't coming from within. He was reading it. The entire speech. Now that was Donald Trump. Everything he said up to that last 4 to 5 minutes, that was him. Look at all his speeches. Everything is putting somebody else down. Everything is a profane word or two. Everything is how great he is. Everything is what all he has accomplished. Everything is all about his grievances towards his enemies. Everything is always about putting down President Joe Biden, putting down President Obama, both of which were in politics when he was still playing around with the Epstein files. Yeah, I said it. Both of them are highly educated and honorable men in the political world. Shut your mouth, man. It's appalling. All that time, he was claiming and taking credit for things that he did not do. He used that platform. He could not have done that if the teleprompter was working, because the speech perhaps that was written, and let's remember, he's surrounded by loyalists, so they probably would have put in there all of that. But he spent the entire time talking about his grievances. Do you go in somebody else's house and put down how it smells from their food? Do you put down, when you're in somebody else's house, how it's made up, how it looks? In the United States, you can do that and they're going to pull out a gun and shoot you or shoot at you. You don't go in somebody else's home, in their domain, and put them down for how they're living, how they have it set up. But Donald Trump did that to the United Nations. Donald Trump did that to every nation sitting there listening to him, might I add, begrudgingly. I don't think they all walked out as they did on Netanyahu, because I think they wanted to see what kind of fool he was going to make of himself. I think I saw some of them cameras up and filming, because they knew it was going to be madness. They knew it was going to be insane talk. And I think they just wanted to sit there and hear the man go on and on and on with nothing but lies, untruth. He talked about 7 wars. Not one of them. How can you claim credit for stopping wars in countries that you once said, by the way, who were African countries, were nothing but shithole countries? Hello? I just don't understand how it's reasonable. Something is missing in the mind when any of us stand and do what he did today. It was a disgrace to defile everybody there. Let me tell you something. One day Donald Trump's going to die. Here's another news flash. One day you're going to die. One day I'm going to die. One day we're all going to die. And in certain religious beliefs, you will stand before God, you will kneel before God, and you will answer to that God, the one true living God, what you said, what you didn't say, what you did, what you didn't do, and why. Boom. So what you do now, no matter how evil it is, it has its consequences. And you and I are seeing a lot of evil happening. They're getting by, but as my mother and my deceased father used to always say, but they don't get away. I want to share with you 4 things that I took from his speech today. The first one was the contradiction of peace. He contradicted himself from beginning to end. You're sitting there bragging about what you're doing that you haven't actually done, but you're taking credit for it. You're trashing your fellow leaders before you. You are discrediting the nations that are under the umbrella of the United Nations. You're dogging them out and telling them all these things, but you say nothing about addressing the conflict in those nations and peacekeeping on any level from the most powerful country in the world, which, by the way, is quickly losing respect. That's the first one, the contradiction of peace. You speak about peace in the last 3-4 minutes, and it wasn't coming from him. It wasn't coming from his heart. It was coming from that teleprompter that he read. I assure you, I believe he demanded that that teleprompter be shut down while he got up there and said what he wanted to say so that he could say it how he wanted to say it. And he defiled everything and everybody, including himself. Number 2, let's talk about spectacle versus substance. He made a spectacle of himself. I'm sorry, he did. I'm so happy he and his wife weren't hurt on that escalator, but I'm really sorry that they both had to suffer people in the assembly looking at the two of them like, dear God, how much longer do we have to endure this? It was on every face that was there. You couldn't get around it. People were appalled. Nations were appalled. And it was just downright disgusting. Taking credit for all these things, and just the narrative was his own. Here's the third thing I picked up from it. A felon's bid for legitimacy. Did you not hear how he was pushing by taking credit for stopping 7 wars? What wars is he talking about? What countries is he talking about? What I've seen in the 8 months that he's been back is sheer destruction, not peacekeeping. I have not seen or heard, neither has anybody else. There's no evidence of him bringing peace to 7 wars. What? Where? When? When? Oh, you're all powerful that you did it in the 8 months you've been in the White House again? Okay. And on top of that, there's all of this mounting on the Nobel Peace Prize. I just hope that the most honorable platform of achievement for various categories as it relates to the world and humanity, I pray to God they didn't fall for that. I pray that the rightful person who has truly engaged and there's proof of their peacekeeping, I pray that's who they announce. Not some desperate, pathetic bid for legitimacy from a man with 34 felonies. We have to think in terms of, as it relates to our world leaders, we have to think in terms of appropriateness. We have to think in terms of integrity. We have to think in terms of moral ethics. When it comes to this administration, ain't none. Ain't none. You can float your boat any way you want. Ain't none. It's sad. Truth has to always be in the lead. Integrity should always be in the lead. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, says the word of God. Also, says the Quran. The heart does not need a teleprompter to speak. I am not using a teleprompter to speak from my heart. When you go and dismantle the U.S. aid, one of the most premier agencies of the United Nations, and you know that dismantling it, millions of people are going to suffer and die because the aid that they once had, that they've come to know, that they've come to rely on, is gone. And you think you should be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize? Where's the peace in it? When you take 800, 500 tons of food and you set it on fire, and then you create a narrative that it is spoiled, but you provide no evidence of the food spoiling. You just bloody don't want those people to eat. When you want to displace people in Gaza so that you can profit, so that you, a nation of the United States, can own, purchase, and it's not for sale, by the way, a place called Gaza, where Palestinians have lived all their lives, and you want to shove them out like so that you can build a resort with your Jewish son-in-law? Where's the peace in that? Where's the humanity in that? You want to build a resort on the bodies of dead children who were burned and scorched by acid, whose bodies were shot and blown to pieces? Look, I agree. Hamas started that war October 7, but Netanyahu is the one that's keeping it going. Do we give a Nobel Peace Prize to leaders who are staying in power and committing genocide and crimes to keep from paying the penalty for their crimes? But if you or I commit a crime, you're going to pay for it. The Nobel Peace Prize, to me, is like entering into heaven. My father was a pastor 56 years. And one of the things that he said all the time was there are going to be three surprises when it comes to entering into heaven. The first surprise will be that you made it. The second surprise will be you'll look for someone that you knew that you thought was going to make it, ain't gonna be there. The third surprise in heaven will be you'll look for someone that you knew wasn't going to be there, and they're there. Those are the three surprises in heaven. I don't think the Nobel Peace Prize should be in that category. I think it should be the one element of surprise as to who gets it and why. Usually it's based on honor, integrity, and nobleness in heart. And then finally, what I took from it was the moral line we cannot cross. We cannot cross the moral line to highly esteem criminals. We cannot cross the moral line to highly esteem self-indulged dictators. You understand that dictators are all about dismantling everything that strips them from obeying the law. That's the bottom line. I hope and pray in closing that every nation that was sitting in the General Assembly today at the United Nations, let me speak a word of encouragement to you. I have lived year 2, 3 years in many of your nations, and I thank God for you and your people. I thank God that your people, rich, middle class, and poor, were good to me. They treated me royally. They would hear me speak on stage, and when I came off, I was constantly invited to go to people's homes, to break bread with them, to meet their children, to bless their homes, to help them build a business, to help them figure out how to get a bank account to build their business. I thank God for all of your nations and what you're trying to do to bring sovereignty to your people, not because it's said by a leader that thinks your country is a shithole country or by a leader who thinks about your country in a negative way and portrays it to your face and yet has never been there and doesn't really know what's going on in your nation. May God bless America because America needs it right now. I'm not against the man in the White House. I'm against what he does. May God bless all nations of the world and every nation that was at the General Assembly today. May he flood your nations with peace, prosperity, pressed down, run in together, shaken together. May he bless your nations, your leaders, your people, and deliver your people from oligarchies, from troubled men, troubled leaders, corruption. May God bring shalom, peace to you, to your people. And I hope that above all that was said, that at the end of the day, you use the 4 gifts that God has put in all our heads. Here it is quickly. Your eyes for observation, your nose for inhalation, your mouth for articulation, and your ears for information. I pray that the information you received, that you found, left you grieving, left you angry, that you have pushed it aside, you have cast it aside. And I pray that my words, you are inhaling, you are articulating back to your colleagues, to your nation, that you're taking information and deciphering and shifting it like wheat to benefit who you are, where you are, and what you need to do. I speak for nations around the world with my heart. I speak for the sovereign voices, those who have a voice but no platform, those who need a voice and a platform, those who have no platform or no voice. Sovereign Voice speaks for you. We speak peace through free speech, through kind speech, through good speech, to empowering speech. But at no time will we use this platform to speak mean speech, hate speech, and speech that is not exalting. But we will speak fact speech that empowers, that educates, and informs. I pray you have received pretty much my prayer to you and those nations that were there today. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless your nations, wherever you are in the world. This is Sovereign Voices. My name is Tirade Dubois, and I thank you for watching. Merci beaucoup. Bonne journée. Au revoir.